You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Well, hello there. Welcome to episode 46. I have a special treat for you all today, so we're just going to get right to it. You get the honor of hearing me have a real and raw conversation with my dear friend, Whitney Allen. First of all, you're going to hear this in the very beginning. Whitney has outed my true identity. So funny. You'll hear her refer to me by my given name, which is Rachel. I didn't correct her on that because that's how some people have come to know me, and of course it's still a part of who I am with my close friends. I'll allow it. My path crossed with Whitney's first during my own infertility journey, and we just connected in so many amazing ways. While we do talk about how we first met here, I want to give just a quick little backstory on that. Back in the day, I searched for a local support group when I lived in Lexington, Kentucky. I didn't find one that was secular, which is what I felt I needed. That was frustrating. So I reached out to Resolve, the National Infertility Association, and asked, what does one need to do to start a local chapter? A prime example, if I may say so, of not getting discouraged when you don't find what you're looking for. Just create it yourself. Anyway, we first met through that group I started, and since then, Whitney herself has become a shining example of what's possible in so many ways. She has also created her own spaces for herself and others when her searches came up empty. That is how you do it. She seriously inspires me every day with the way she shows up for others and also how she now shows up for herself. And Whitney's journey is a bit different than mine, as she has arrived at different choices through a faith-based approach. It's all good. I love that we can customize our approaches and still keep on appreciating each other. I highly encourage you to have a listen to this episode because whether or not you have personally been impacted by infertility, it is likely that you know someone who has. And I just think the insights shared here are so valuable in so many ways. If you've ever wondered about what goes on behind the scenes and in the minds of women and couples who have been handed this particular challenge in life, we're here for you today. Okay, that's all the intro you need. Let's do this. Whitney Allen.
Rachel.
I am so freaking excited to have you here. Let's talk about how we met. How did we meet? Do you even remember?
Well, twice we met.
Yes. Yes. There's our
see.
relationship, as you say, our relationship and our relationship 2.0.
That's right. That's right. It's just a testament to how I think, people come in and out of our lives. But let's see, it was, oh my gosh, I don't even know. It had to be at least 15 years ago.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. And, you had started oh gosh, what was it called? The infertility support group.
Infertility support group with Resolve.
Resolve. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was, in the depths of it. And I think that was kind of like my last ditch effort as far as trying to get some support and hope in, in counseling or something. I don't know. But yeah, and so you had started that, and then we built, our friendship there, and then you moved to Texas, I
Yeah,
think,
I did.
um, and then when I was doing some deep personal work or trying to, and saw you were starting your coaching business, and then we got reconnected.
Yeah, we did. That was what you call our relationship 2.0.
2.0, that's right.
Yeah.
It was my version of myself 2.0 too, I think.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So amazing. Tell me about your story in terms of like uncovering expectations of how your life was going to be versus reality.
Yeah, that's, isn't that the question?
Yeah.
For me, I don't think I was any different expectation than most women have as far as, you get married and you decide you're gonna, when you're gonna build your family. And that's what we did at 29. My husband and I got married, and we waited a year and decided we were gonna start to have children. And you expect that to happen right away, and it didn't. And 6 months in and still nothing, and a year and still nothing. And then you really start to reevaluate, what reality is and versus what you expected it to be. And over the course of about 10 years, there was, treatments and drugs and appointments, and everything was scheduled. And we just spiraled through the path of infertility, and we had a miscarriage. And it just completely, for about a decade, completely changed what I thought my life was going to be. And then, at one point I realized that I couldn't live my life this way anymore. And even if I wasn't going to get what I wanted or had thought my life would be, I had to make a lot of changes, and I had to kind of rescue myself. um, and I went back to the Catholic Church. I'd been gone for 20 years, and started the healing process and accepting a new reality.
Yeah, you kind of glossed over the miscarriage part. It's like it's a thing that happened.
Yeah.
Is that still the case for you? I mean, do you still feel like it's just a thing that happened, or is it deeper than that?
I don't think I've ever felt like it's just a thing that happened. The infertility portion of my story is definitely um, longer. I think the miscarriage was um, it was probably what spiraled me into a lot of depression and anger, but it was built around the infertility. And so, no, it was never anything that just happened to me. It's incredibly a deep wound. But one, I think because of my faith, I was able to reconcile a lot quicker in some degree than the infertility. Um, because of our belief of that was a life, and that life is no longer here. And having a belief in what happens after we die. I think that there's some comfort for me around that. But the infertility element of it is, I think that for me it's a I don't want to say bigger part of the story, because I never ever want to minimize the miscarriage. But um, it's probably where I meet most women as far as relating to them. So it's maybe a little more, in the forefront of when I tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're totally going to talk about what you do now, but leading up to that, I've talked about my own struggles with infertility on this podcast, and I do see this journey as something that's hard for others to fully understand or relate to. It's a special kind of pain, loss, and emptiness. Special, I'm using air quotes here, from my personal perspective. Have you found this to be the case for you as well? Like, even just now, you were saying, oh, and my story is, oh, I miscarried. But you also miscarried very day that you found out you were pregnant, yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, can we talk about that special kind of pain
Yeah,
that
it's polarizing, and I've used that word probably too much, but it's the best word I can think of when I think about this because
mhm,
it truly is, and we don't somebody that has children or even honestly, and I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it. I think even people who have struggled with miscarriages or infertility, you never get over that wound. But I think when you do have, we ultimately go on to have children, there's a um, there's a healing there that people that don't go on to have children don't really get from that. But people that experience that emptiness, that loss, the loss of that loss of fertility, that loss of a life. There's no possible way to relate that to somebody that never had to experience that. It is, you know, I think we all kind of joke a little bit like it's a club, special club you never wanted to be a part of.
yeah.
Um, but it is in fact a it's a club of that it's women and men who who know a type of loss, and it's something I think about a lot, that, and it's easy I think to sink into despair when you spend too much time there, but all of the things it robs you of,
Mhm.
um, it takes away your self-confidence. It takes away your worth as a woman, your what your marriage means, your relationship with your own mother. It's something that you just have a hard time explaining to somebody who's never experienced it.
Yeah, it's like this idea that it is an inherent right. It is a birthright for women that we should procreate.
Yeah,
We have the ability to procreate. And when we don't have that ability, when that rug is ripped out from under our feet, it is jarring. Yes?
absolutely. It's unfathomable, really, when you think about it, because nobody gets married and decides, hey, this isn't going to work, or what if
Yeah.
I, what if it takes us 3 years? Most people think, and understandably so. We have media telling us that if you're 15 fabulous, you too can have twins, um, and we don't see the struggle. And I will say, just kind of slight sidebar, I'm really saddened, but also hopeful to see a lot of celebrities coming out and talking about their miscarriages or their struggles with
Mm.
infertility. And it was such a taboo topic and still is, but I think that's helping to kind of shift that conversation. But I think um it's not, nothing you ever expect. It's nothing you ever envision in your life. We all have those, especially women. We have these like, oh, what if I drive off into a ditch, or I slide off of the road, or what if somebody grabs me from behind? Like, you have these kind of fear-based narratives in your head. Sometimes I think we're kind of taught that as women, to be cautious of things, but we don't ever have this narrative. We never have the narrative that we don't get to be mothers. We don't have that narrative that our lives aren't going to turn out the way we expect them to be in regards to building a family, because no one told us that that might not happen.
Oh my God, you are so right. Right? I never considered that. I always expected to
Right.
be a mother. I always expected to be pregnant and carry a baby to term and deliver and those things. I just expected that that would happen for me. I so appreciate you bringing that up because, wow, yeah, it's not a thing that any of us have ever considered or been
Yeah.
told as we grew up. You know, we were given baby dolls to mother,
Right.
you know? So we always thought we would have this thing. Wow, that's powerful. What triggered you the most when you were in the depths of your pain around this? Was there a specific phrase or circumstance that would send you into a thought spiral?
Sure. There was a lot.
Mm,
I think at the kind of the peak of it, it was everything and anything. But it definitely the ones that kind of hurt and honestly still do, like there's the wound is so deep, it's never not some level of tenderness, even if, like I love my life. I'm happy. I feel like I've done the work to heal, but that wound is still there, and it always will be. And in some ways, I'm grateful for it. But to get back to your question, I think it's when people would ask, you know, in a group, and somebody says, "Oh, do you have children?" No,
yeah.
you know, um, and hearing that somebody else is pregnant, and that's lessened significantly over the years, but that was a big thing, when your friends and people you grew up with and your relatives are getting pregnant and you're hearing it, and it was kind of a double-edged whammy as far as one hearing that somebody else is pregnant and you're still not, um, and then the guilt of feeling not negative, but jealous or envious of that person, and so it's like there's no winning. And then that would just kind of spiral me, um, just as far as feeling like somebody had to tone down their happiness to protect me, and
Mm,
if they were being sensitive to my feelings, and or if they were just being exuberant of their own news, it was just kind of brutal. And so those two things, that those kind of innocent, why would anybody think that they shouldn't ask, do you have children, or how many children do you have? That's a natural question. um and it would, usually kind of that would usually be a tipping point for me in any circumstance, but definitely hearing about somebody else's pregnancy. And I had a weird, I don't know, I think it's weird. Like it was the pregnancy that would gut me, like I couldn't
mm,
be around pregnant women. I couldn't hear that they were pregnant. Once the baby was born, I was like, give me that baby. I'm gonna,
yeah.
smother it with love. Um, but it wasn't when they went on to have the child, it was the 9 months, because that's what was,
Yeah.
physically being robbed of me. But, yeah, those were definitely challenging circumstances.
Yeah, and we should probably add at this point our, where we are both in our infertility journeys. I have made no secret that I am an adoptive parent, and you made the choice to remain childless.
Yeah.
How did you and your husband come to that choice?
It wasn't a, singular decision or conversation. We were faced with, the next steps being IVF, in vitro, um, adoption, and fostering. Those were our next options because, naturally it wasn't going to happen. And, looking at our financial situation, looking at, our families, looking at just deeply looking into our own hearts, we decided we weren't going to pursue any additional means. We had already done a lot of medical, um, options, from between surgery and drugs and shots and all the fun stuff. And I was done, emotionally and psychologically and spiritually, uh, and he knew that. I think honestly, if I had wanted or pushed to pursue another step, he would have backed me 100%. But I was done, and I had to say goodbye, and I had to close that chapter in my life. And it wasn't something that I did without him, without my husband. We talked about it, and we decided we weren't going to pursue anything further. But it was never like you know, we never said we're going to close this door forever. We were just closing that door for right now.
Mm.
And then we, kind of started to put our lives back together outside of that space. And we still talk about it, every now and then it comes up, and we're just like, it wasn't our calling to adopt. It wasn't our calling to foster. And we think it is beautiful and necessary. It just wasn't ours. And there's no guilt around that. There's no regret around that. Same thing with in vitro. Now that gets a little bit complicated when you get into my return to the Catholic Church, but we won't go there.
We
But it was
can.
before that. Oh, it's okay.
We
No,
totally
it was
can.
before that, and it was, it wasn't a moral decision. I'd like to say that it was, but it wasn't. Um, it was a financial decision, and it was, how much more am I going to put my body through?
Mm. Mm.
Um, and how much more am I going to put my heart through? And there's times that I look back and think like, did I give up, or did I choose to heal, or did I give up?
Mm.
Did I choose to surrender to what God's plan was for my life, or did I just quit? And that's that it haunts me every now and then, and I typically work through that. But yeah, it wasn't a, hey, we're done, we're going to be childless now and live a childless life. I think there are people that do make that decision in
Yeah.
that manner. It Ours was just more, we're going to take a little time out, and then kind of see what happens, and kind of try to heal as many wounds as we can before we take the next steps in our lives. um, and then that's where we found peace, in rebuilding our life childless. And and I am at peace with that.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that progression because, you know, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is what whether or not you sought emotional support for
Mhm.
yourself during this time. And I know that your faith has been a very centering and grounding thing for you,
Yeah.
and that you also were not in that space, I think, for a time. So let's talk about that. Let's put that out there. I want to know.
Sure.
I'm curious.
I
And
did.
you know my position. I'm not like I don't like take a position on anything like that. And this is what I love about our relationship is that we can just talk about all the things. You
Yeah.
are now a devout Catholic. You were not always,
No,
right?
no.
Let's talk about that.
No, I wasn't. And it was, I'd fallen away from the church, probably, if I was being honest, in high school. But uh, I always had a connection to God. I always prayed. Even though I wasn't practicing the Catholic faith, I was still, it wasn't like I denounced God and became an atheist. Um, I still was seeking his comfort. And in the Catholic Church we have saints, and I was still praying to the saints and asking for their intercession. And even though I wasn't actively participating in the church, but anyway, just kind of back it up a little bit. in with the infertility and my miscarriage. And I think it was, gosh, it's so hard to remember some of the timelines, but I do think it was after my miscarriage that I sought professional help. And I went through probably 3 or 4 therapists, and I never connected with a single one of them.
Mm.
It was I never found, I never found somebody who was gonna have the conversation with me that I wanted to have. Um, and, even with, like, and then when I joined the Resolve group, and that was so much closer to anything I needed it to be, because it was people that understood where I was and what my story was.
Yeah.
Um, but it, I never, I in the throes of it, in those 10 years of dealing with the questions of how, if we were going to build our family, how we were going to build our family. Um, I never found, I really never found anything that brought me any form of comfort. And so it was when I returned to the church that was my where I was able to truly find kind of that peace and be able to move on, um, and find that acceptance and probably more than anything, the surrender you know of carrying the burden of it all. But it was really hard. It's one of the things that led me to create the ministry at the church called Healing Hopeful Hearts for women and men, who are trying to walk through the path of infertility and miscarriage, and then ultimately led to the Forward Healing Project, because I wanted to have conversations with women and men that I wanted to have when I was going through it. I wanted to create a space and a voice for those people that I never found.
Yeah. Let's talk about that too, because you sought, so you went back to the church and you sought refuge in the church and you started looking at all of the programs that they had
Yeah.
and you were looking for a place for you. And what did you find?
Nothing. Well, I did. There are definitely programs and ministries out there for miscarriage, and but I didn't see an infertile, childless, married woman
Mm.
category. um, and
What
and
categories did you see?
oh,
Tell us about
divorce
that.
and people who had been divorced, people who had abortions, people who were widows, young Catholics, young professional Catholics. I mean, it was like everything you could think of. Um, and and I thought, here's a faith deeply rooted in, procreation
Yeah.
and, the stereotypes of the big Irish Catholic families that have 10 kids. And I'm like, I know the statistics. There's no way you can tell me that, you know, this entire church doesn't have women who are suffering, who haven't dealt with infertility, who haven't mourned a miscarriage, and the men who had, stood by their side during it. And where are they getting help? What conversations are they having? And there's nothing for them. Um,
So
and
you created a space for them called Healing Hopeful Hearts, or
yeah,
H3,
that's right.
as you affectionately call it.
Yeah.
I love that though. I love that. At a you looked at a program, if you will, in this space and said, there's nothing for me here.
Mhm.
Let me create that space.
Yeah. And I did. And it was at a time that I was emotionally capable of doing that. And I don't know that you can I don't know that you can create that space and be that voice for people until you're further along in your own personal healing and your own journey. and it was the right time for me.
Mhm.
I don't know that I could have done that 5 years earlier. I don't
Mhm.
know if I could have, you know, in the midst of my deepest woundedness, been able to say, I'm gonna I'm gonna help other people, because I didn't know how to help myself at that point. It wasn't until I was able to let go and release a lot of things and start to rebuild my life that I was able to create that space for other people.
Yeah. Holding space is such a it is a healing aspect, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
is part of your journey. Let's talk about the men too, because you've
Right.
mentioned that. And, it's a couple's thing. It's a couple's problem, right?
Yeah. I mean, this can make or break marriages. It really can.
Yes.
And maybe it doesn't break it in the sense of divorce, but it can break it emotionally, sexually. There's so much that happens in your relationship when you have to navigate infertility, miscarriage, not building the family that you wanted, he wanted, your families wanted. Um, and I think with the majority of the time, the focus is on the woman. It's us that, although statistically it is equal, but I think kind of perceptually, it's the woman who is going to grieve and struggle, and we're the ones that, if we do get pregnant and miscarry, like, that's our bodies that are being, um, you know we're suffering that loss physically and emotionally. Like, men can understand it, but they're not physically going through it. It's the women who are getting shots and
Mhm.
having to take their temperatures, and I think naturally women are probably, more better planners than men, and so we do have to calendar things or make doctor's appointments, and so it's definitely a probably a little bit more visible for people to look and say, well, this is, the woman that's struggling. But in my own personal experience with my husband, and then also in working with H3, and working with some couples, seeing the emotional impact of the men when they are given a space to, a safe place where they can unload, where they are not also carrying their wives, and seeing them, kind of breathe for the first time in
Mm.
who knows how long,
Mhm.
and sometimes break down. And it really made me realize that this is, you know, men carry this too. They have to grieve this loss too. And two things kind of really illuminated that for me. One was my husband. When I started healing Hopeful Hearts, I remember clearly we were sitting on our porch and we were having a conversation about it, and I was excited to get it started. And I literally saw, like, he physically relaxed. He, kind of breathed this deep breath. And I realized in that moment, he had never grieved.
Mm.
He never grieved any of this because he was taking care of me all those years.
Wow.
He was protecting me all those years. And and it was just like really kind of eye-opening when I realized that, like, he felt this too. He felt every ounce of it that I did, but it wasn't until he knew I was okay that he was able to process it himself. Um, and the second thing, coming back to the church, uh, is I've read some articles, primarily by priests, but also, nuns, sisters, who have talked about, in choosing religious life, they also have to grieve the
No.
loss of family.
Yeah.
That they're not going to build their own families. They're not going to have a spouse. They're not going to have children, and they have to process that. And those two things combined kind of really made me realize that, like, men are not these dumb oxes that don't feel things. Like, they do it differently. they process their grief differently, they process their emotions differently, but that doesn't mean that they don't also need that space, and that they don't also need the voice, to say, I know where you are, and we can we're going to get through this, and it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry.
I love it. I love it that you're so inclusive to men and that you want to help heal the entire relationship around accepting childlessness or moving forward with something different. And we'll talk about your forward healing project in a moment, but you said something, actually, let's talk about it now. You you sent me a text in like mid-December, just a random text, and it was a link to this podcast. And I was like, what are you doing? You didn't tell me anything about it. I think we had kind of talked about the idea of it, but you sent me a link to your trailer and you're like, this is happening. And I'm like, what is happening? And I love it. I already love it. And you said something, I think was your second episode that really struck me. You referred to yourself as an emotional cutter.
Yeah,
And even said, okay, this is gross, and this is what you said, or an emotional scab picker.
yeah.
And you followed that up with, sometimes the pain we know is the safest place to be because we know what to expect. I had to pause and write that one down because it was so very relatable. Can you elaborate on this a little? Is this
Yeah.
about finding comfort in the discomfort? I mean, what is this about? The pain is the safest place.
Yeah, I think it's where we stall out in a growth, in when we heal, and I think it's human nature to seek what because whether or not that space is safe, if it's what you stay there. There's this phenomenon, I guess you would call it, where people who win the lottery often will go on to become bankrupt because they don't know how to be rich,
Mm-hmm.
and so they only know how to be, they only know how to live the life they were living before. They don't know how to live a new life. And I think it's the same thing, with pain and grief. There's that temptation to just stick with what you know, even if what you know is excruciatingly painful, because you know the pain, it's going to hurt, you know what to expect. There's no fear of the unknown. There's no, and I think for me, it was more it was more scary to hope than it was to just hang out and be sad and be depressed, because I knew what sadness and depressed felt like. I
Mm,
didn't know I didn't know it was on the other side of hope, and that terrified me. So
mm,
I was able to, I stayed in that, and I think people often do. Even if it's not grief, it's a bad job, it's a bad marriage, it's a negative relationship. It's what you know, and so you find this false security in it, and so you stay there. Um, and the idea that there's a place of peace and joy is like, you can just become crippled at the idea of like what it would take to get to that place, because you have to let go of all the things in order to get to a better place. And I always one of the things I always say is that joy is on the other side of expectation. But it takes a really long time to get there, and I think we tend to want to hunker down behind that wall, because that's where in our minds it's safe, and the idea of moving forward is terrifying.
I love that. Joy is on the other side of expectation.
Yeah.
I love that. You always come up with the most amazing phrases. I have said that. And let's talk about healing. because eventually we'll come to the place where we recognize that's what we really want.
Mm.
Yet it's often such a twisted journey to get there. And I know you're going to talk about this more on your podcast, but can you tell us a little bit about what it means to heal at the cellular level?
Yeah, I've used that phrase a couple times, what the cellular level is. And just in comparison, you think like cellular being our physical bodies, but cellular being what what we need to heal our soul, our not just our hearts and our minds, but our the very essence of our being. Um, and I think for me, it's you have to mother your wound and love the scar and say thank you to God for the life that you have, and that it's beautiful and that you love this place. And that's what you're moving towards at a cellular level, is that you can honestly, wholeheartedly say thank you for these lessons, thank you for these scars, thank you for the beautiful life I have on the other side of that pain and that grief. um, and it's not something that you can easily attain. It's not something you can just snap your fingers and say, to say to God, your will, not mine. That's almost, it's almost unfathomable to think of, because we're told that we get what we want, we get what we work for, we get what we plan for. And to say, to God, well, okay, I'm willing to accept your plans over mine, even though I don't like your plan right now. Trusting what that is and surrendering over to that and saying, there was reason and purpose for this part of my story. And now I'm going to find beauty in it and accept that. And that's when you start to heal at the soul level, at the
That
cellular
is
level.
healing at the cellular level. And I am crying. Hello. OMG. You're amazing. Okay. So I am going to put you on the spot and I'm going to ask you one more question in terms of your podcast.
Mhm.
Your podcast, the Forward Healing Project,
Yeah.
which I love. I love it, love it, love it. And they're nice short episodes, but you have promised some interviews of your own forthcoming. So I'm looking forward to all of the things. Can you tell me about the symbolism of the iris, of the purple iris on your cover?
Yeah. So it's a flower that is representative of Mary, the Jesus's mother. And it was a part of. There's several flowers that are represented with her, but that one is kind of in particular associated with her sorrows. And for the non-Catholics out there, or non-Christians probably, the seven sorrows of Mary work through her life as a mother, from the moment that from when she was pregnant. There was a prophecy that she would feel the piercing pain through her soul, that was because of what her son, what his life would go on to be, in his death. And they lost him in the temple when he was young, and then she had to watch him be crucified. And so it goes through there's seven distinct sorrows of her life. And it's been very powerful for me to associate, to connect with those stories, and what she went through as a mother, and the ultimate loss that she went through. And that flower in particular represents her sorrows. And so that's why I chose it.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that because I needed
I
to
was say, I
know.
don't think I ever told you that.
No, you did not. You did not. But you alluded to the last time we spoke. You said there's a reason that
There's
I
a reason
chose
for
that.
it. Yeah.
And it isn't just random. It's
Yeah.
not just a pretty flower. So I needed to know. I needed to know what was happening behind that flower. That's Whew, amazing. All right. How can couples or women or men, individually, you work with individuals too, I
Mhm. Yep.
presume.
Yeah.
How can they connect with you they want to, if they want a safe space to talk about the things that really hurt and that are so hard to talk about just
Sure.
publicly?
Yeah, there's a couple different avenues that I have. One is the podcast, the Forward Healing Project podcast. And then I also have my website by the same name, forwardhealingproject.com. And then Instagram. And Healing Hopeful Hearts is really the ministry that the Forward Healing Project was kind of born from Healing Hopeful Hearts. But Healing Hopeful Hearts is the actual ministry that I do through my cathedral in Lexington, Kentucky. But it is something that we've been doing virtually right now with the pandemic. And so it is not limited and will not be limited moving forward to the people of the parish. It's open to anyone. And that's healinghopefulhearts@gmail.com is my email for that, to get information about the next series, or just to connect that way. But it's going to be something that's opened up um, beyond the parish. And I want to also encourage people that if they are interested in speaking with me, you know sometimes the Catholicism can spook people. Would believe me, I get it. I was spooked
Mhm.
for many years, um, and and I try to build my ministry and my podcast in a way that, yes, it's going to have a Catholic lens, but anybody of any faith, of any belief, should be able to find healing and find some peace, and absolutely find a safe space regardless.
Yes. Yes. I agree with that because I have already listened to all of your episodes and I I identify with it. I mean, even though I'm not identifying as Catholic, I'm just a broken human.
Right, right.
And it's so good. It is so freaking good. All right, I will link up all of your website, your email, and all of that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So people can find you and subscribe to your new podcast. I'm so excited for you. Thank you so, so much. I am so grateful to have you in my life. Can I just add that you were, you, and you still are, because this cannot be undone, my very first client as a life.
Really? I
Yeah.
knew I was like in the beginning, but that's
Yes.
exciting. Well,
Yes.
I think I told you when I launched the podcast, I didn't tell anybody. I just did this trailer, and I was like, I'm gonna just do this thing and put it out there.
I
And
love it.
once it's out there, then I have to make it happen. But it was your voice in my head that was like, just do
Oh,
it, just do it, just it doesn't have to be perfect, just publish it.
oh my
So
God. Oh my God. Oh, I love it. It's just like a full circle. It was like a full circle moment. I was so excited for you when I heard your trailer. I was just like, she is on fire. She's lit up. She's lit. I love it, love it, love it. Thank you. Thank you so, so much for being in my life, Whitney.
Oh, thank you. It's honestly, it was so many years of, after I started H3, where I was like, I'm going to do this podcast, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it was the work that I did with you that really, I mean, yes, I've done a lot of different personal work, but, um, you and I have worked together really closely over the past year and a half. And it just, I give so much credit to the work that we've done together to these things happening. So
Mm, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. We are lit.
yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Wow. That was such a great conversation. I know we both really appreciated the opportunity to bring it to you because we had a nice little chat following the recorded version that really just brought it home for both of us. What a full circle moment. Don't forget to check the show notes for links to further connect with Whitney and to hear her amazing podcast, The Forward Healing Project. She is truly putting a part of herself out there for the world and doing so from a place of love, light, and healing. I love her calm and compassionate energy. This human is a gift. I adore her and I love knowing her. Also, I want to remind you that no matter what we are going through in life, we can still make the choice to honor ourselves along our journey. That's why I'm offering a brand new 30-day course, Feel Better Than Fine No Matter What. We'll talk about all of the things I've been touching on with this podcast over the past year. Dwelling on the past, feeling guilty, comparing yourselves to others, wishing things could be different, wishing people around you could be different, how you show up for others, and most importantly, how you show up for yourself. All of the things. And it's going to be interactive. We'll have daily conversations about the things that are keeping you stuck. And I'll also do weekly group coaching sessions. This is going to be so lit because all of the things that are happening in the world and the behaviors of others don't mean a thing when you're living this life with a managed mind. From a place of awareness and ease, that is where your freedom lies. That is your power. I'm going to show it to you. 30 days to freedom. 30 days until you will feel better than fine, no matter what. We start on March 1st. If you're hearing this later, don't worry. I also have plans to offer it again and again because I already know how amazing and impactful this is going to be. Simply check out the show notes for a link to be placed on the waiting list for this course. I will be publishing the registration details to those on that list first. If you are able to get in by March 1st, 2021, fantastic. If it's a later version, know that it will be just as excellent, if not even more so. Just get on the list. Commit to connecting with me and showing up, and I promise you'll feel better than fine. I'm so excited to be offering this. I absolutely cannot wait. No reason that you should wait either. Get on it. Light up. Shine on.